All right, I have one remark and one question, and question for President Ralph. The remark is that I think when we think of globalization, liberalization, well, we think too much about all or nothing, but that's really not the case. The very fact that WTO and its predecessor, GATT, allow countries to apply anti-dumping rules, anti-countervailing duties, and national security clause, and safeguards, and all the others, was to make sure that country would be able to benefit. But the reality is, in some cases, they don't feel they benefit. They play the same game, they're losing out. So they want to reset. So I think that's actually is not unfair. They just want to reset the system so that everyone will benefit from it. My question has to do with the one remark made by Ziwu at the beginning, winner takes all. I think that's somewhat related, but I want to go towards another area. And that is after the moods, then there was expression concern among some university professors that in the end, would the world's university be dominated by the top 30, 40, 50? So that they have to start lectures, authorities, and they gave the most interesting, the most attractive lectures, which other universities can use. So as the bulk of the education, and they'll just be offering discussion sessions. So professors under the top tier, maybe 0.01%, they use other people's material. These are star professors. They are reduced to tutors. So they're no longer real professors. So I wonder whether this is something you think might happen in the future. That not only with a tiering of university, professors become tutors de facto. Thank you very much.
It's a very good question. The way I view it is the following. I believe that the technology is going to produce the content or deliver the content in the way that that textbooks have delivered the content so far. So it's more about delivering content. I think that, in my view, in a very simplistic way of looking at it, is that this approach to deliver content is just that. You can read a book, or you can watch these kind of videos and follow the gaming of the videos with questions so that you can figure out whether you learned or not. But that is really only about information transfer. It's just information transfer. The real education, the real information transfer becoming knowledge is in the classroom. When you are surrounded by somebody who knows more than you do, and that person guides you to use that information you might have learned either reading a book or doing it online. So I think the value of the lecturer, of the person in the classroom that guides your thinking is becoming even more important. That individual is not there to convey information to all of you listening to me right now. That person is there assuming you got the information because you read a book or because you look at the videos, and now let's make that information, let's use it to become knowledge. So the lecture becomes a much more important component of your education. So they are not going to be replaced, they are becoming much more valuable. Now, having said that, for many people who don't have access to going to a classroom and listening to a guide, a lecturer that guides the thinking of the students, at least that person has the information transfer in a very easy way to digest through this video approach.
I mean, I'd just say to Leonard's question, I don't think it's that different to the way it's always been. We've always used other people's materials. We've always used textbooks or sources of information. But the difference is the point that Victor made earlier on, it's speed. Now it's instantaneous. So instead of a textbook, being produced and published and then disseminated around the world, so we all use it for our teaching, now it's instantaneous. And that's the adaptation that universities need to make.
Just a very quick response to Leonard's question also. The way I'm seeing the market also is that there is a total fragmentation of demand. There will be a very, very large number of niche market needs. So everybody talking about serving the long tail today. So as a smaller institution, you really got to pick the niche that you want to emphasize in and be the global leader in that niche. So I think that's the real response to that question. As good as MIT and Hong Kong U, as good as they are today, they cannot do everything. And especially with the fragmentation of demand, when you talk about different verticals. But what we hope that MIT would do would be to provide the platforms and the methodologies that we can all use.
Thank you. Yes, sir. This gentleman. It's a very bright light, so I can't see you.
Thank you, Mike. I'd like to bring up 2 points. Firstly, between university and industry, would there be a need for intermediary institutions? My friend Choi Yong-sup has started the Korea Institute of Science and Technology in Korea 40 years ago. That was followed by ITRI in Taiwan. In fact, Singapore is now doing intermediate institutions in a big way. Actually, A-Star is all about actually being a halfway house, being a bridge between university and industry. Now, of course, in Boston and the Silicon Valley, it's a very developed situation. There might not be a need. But in Asian countries and in smaller economies, perhaps in Hong Kong, would there be a need for something like that to, so to speak, modulate between supply and demand? Now, my second point is that perhaps I would like to broach the subject of income disparity. Is technology the culprit or savior? Now, Hong Kong has about the highest Gini coefficient in the world at 53.7. We are only exceeded by South Africa and a couple of least developed countries. Now, would the solution be through investing in education and technology, which would eventually lead to diversification of the economy? Thank you.
Excellent questions. Who wants to take which part? You already built an intermediary institution.
Well, I can take the first half. I think the idea of creating something in between universities and industry is an excellent one. And in some areas and in some regions, it will really accelerate the movement of ideas to the marketplace. As you said, in some areas, they are not needed, but I can see the benefit in some other areas. I think the important component there, the important necessary ingredient, is that it should be with heavy industrial participation. It has to be, if this is supposed to be an in-between entity that helps move idea from the university laboratory to an industrial marketplace, industry have to have a say on how that intermediate step is going to take place. And they can work with the public sector and can work with university. So as long as there is a way in which the stakeholders play a role in how to organize that intermediate step, that I think is an excellent idea and is worth exploring. And in fact, an idea very similar to that is something that I recommended in the US for manufacturing, for advanced manufacturing. So for some sectors, in some areas, when you have industry involvement, I think it's an excellent idea.
Yeah, I mean, just Peter, do you want to?
Well, just on that first, on the first point about do you need an intermediary organization? I mean, my answer is it shouldn't be necessary, but the reality is it probably is necessary, and that's where the engine and the kind of descriptor that Raphael made in his speech, it enables universities to engage more rapidly because universities are not particularly good at the outward-facing piece. So I think the answer is it probably is necessary. I regret the fact that it's necessary, but I think it probably is. But the key is that each party needs to recognize the mutual benefit. So if I give a medical example, the approach to drug design has changed radically for the world's pharmaceutical industry. They used to do it in isolation, and they used to do it in competition with the universities. And universities used to regard drug company money as dirty and tainted in some way, and we won't collaborate with them because they're running a business. And what happened about 15 or 20 years ago is that both parties recognized that wasn't the right model, and that industry and universities should collaborate. And the big successful pharmaceutical companies in the world have been very, very active in engaging with universities, working together, and universities have been willing to do that. It's worked particularly well in the UK, and particularly in Cambridge and in Dundee, where you've had a complete synergistic relationship between university and biotech without the need for any intermediary party. But it happened because both parties recognized that there was a better way of doing things.
On the second point, I hope we haven't left you with the notion that technology is the main problem. I mean, with respect to the distribution of income, you know, if you look across countries that are similar, there's enormous differences in the distribution of income. I mean, things that just can't be explained by simple market forces. There's culture and values and overriding institutions and so on. So while I think we have to take seriously the sort of labor disintermediation aspects of digital technologies, I mean, it's far from a complete story. So we wouldn't want to leave you with that.
Yeah. Just a quick thought on that second question. You know, what rings in my mind is the word innovation. And it goes back to what, Raphael, you said earlier. I think people being educated needs to think about creating their own jobs. You cannot ask yourself, who is creating the jobs? Where are the jobs? I go there. Because they're going to be shifting rapidly also. You've got to really be aware of the environment and think about, at all times, creating your own jobs. That, to me, is innovation. And technology is part of innovation. It's not, there could be a lot of innovation without technology, but technology very often is a very good catalyst for people to think about out of the box on innovation. And I think it has to be a culture change and a bottoms-up driver from society that would actually take that sort of concept into consideration.
Thank you, all the speakers. I have a question for President Raphael. Thank you for your comment on the purpose of university education, because you mentioned that MIT has a purpose. So I would like to understand if the best university, the purpose of the best university is to serve the society. So what will be the purpose that we create the best talents? Are we going to create the best talents to produce the best technology to serve the society? And how can we achieve that, given that the business world is targeted at profit maximization? How can we balance the two goals together?
I was waiting how long it'll take for somebody to ask me that question. Look, I think what's important is, in the 21st century, I think universities cannot be isolated from its surroundings, from the society in which it lives. So we have to figure out how to become useful, how to become purposefully useful to our society. And every university is excellent at different things. So I can just comment on how I think MIT could help. But this is what I'm suggesting for how MIT helps society is not the recipe for all universities. What I think is important is to start thinking how each of our universities help society. What is the role that we can play to be connected with society? In the case of MIT, we develop technology. But that technology is not being developed for the sake of it. We develop it to use it for a purpose. So if we develop areas in machine learning or nanotechnology or artificial intelligence or you name it, cybersecurity, is for a purpose. And the purposes are, in our case, domains in which help society, like health of the planet, like human health, I mean, we use technology to move the needle in those domains. So that's the way we see our contribution to society. We can afford to look at the most important challenges the world faces, and we can afford to try to tackle them because we have the resources available to make a big difference. So it'll be, to me, irresponsible not to do that. The students who come to MIT, they come to MIT because they want to partake in something like that. They want to work on something bigger than themselves. Now, that's the reason they come. We don't brainwash them, we don't indoctrinate them. I mean, once they graduate, they do whatever they do. But in reality, once they are educated, thinking that way, and working with others on a problem bigger than themselves, that's what they end up doing after they graduate. So that's the way it works at MIT. The only point that I'm making is that I think it's extremely important that we find our way to be useful to the society we live in, whether it's our city, our state, our nation. In the case of MIT, we are crazy enough to think we can handle the problems of the world. And I do think we can. But every university should find a way in which our students, while we educate them, while they are with us for 4 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever, they, in the process of being educated and learning, they do, as Victor said earlier, they're learning by doing, by practicing what they learn in service to our society.
I think that's a wonderful way to end. Please join me in thanking the panel.